What would the Caribbean be without mesmerizing beaches which lure tourists from all over the world for the sun, sea, and sand experience? Everything about islands like Saint Lucia revolve around its coastlines, and without the beaches, the islands just would not be as appealing. How then to preserve and protect them? The first step, appreciating their value. As much as they serve as income-generating zones for recreation, beaches are homes and habitats for wildlife and protectors of our coastlines. We must keep them clean.
Making the community aware that, our rivers need to be kept clean. The kids use it to bathe to go to school. While we were cleaning, we came across a lot of pampers, defecation, a lot of garbage. Really is an indication to us that we're not keeping the community clean and creating a very unhealthy environment. The beachfront, we've been having this issue for a number of years. But even as the kids were walking around the village, they were protesting against people defecating and littering. I'm hoping that this action today, this form of volunteerism, can actually really impact people in the community and get them towards creating a sustainable community.
We wanted to clean up a beach. There's a lot of things going on social media as well right now. So we thought, why not us? Why don't we do something as well? And it's an important thing. I mean, we sail the ocean. We bring tourist visitors here to all of these islands. So why not make sure it gets a little bit cleaner as we leave it?
Keeping garbage off our beaches and out of our seas and oceans is paramount, as is respecting all organisms which call these waters home.
There are some resorts on island who manage their wastewater in exemplary ways. Examples would be Tikai Resort and Shasta and Jade Mountain Resort. And both of those facilities have invested in a reed bed system which actually replicates what nature does and creates what is called a man-made wetlands. And the wastewater interacts with various aggregates and aquaculture in order to purify, or in wastewater terms, create polished effluent.
A still present problem stems from inadequate sewage systems. In some areas, improperly managed wastewater makes its way into rivers and seas. To combat this, the Water and Sewage Company of Saint Lucia has been pushing for the implementation of proper septic tanks or sewage systems for all.
Places where we don't have the network, we have people using communal septic tanks and septic tanks. Now you find that some places there are poor practices, meaning that the septic tanks are not well designed when it comes to the soak-away aspect. You find the sewer end up in drains, then into the rivers, then into the sea, and that's untreated sewer. It causes pollution for the marine life. We at WASCO trying to bring across now is that we want people, contractors, homeowners, business owners, to come around with some better practices when it comes to disposing of wastewater. We want this wastewater to be treated where it can satisfy the standards to be released into the environment.
Farmers too have an important role to play. They can be vigilant in protecting beaches by adhering to principles of organic farming or agriculture, which include the principles of ecology and health.
We run a program which encompasses a ridge-to-reef concept, that is, looking at all the activities in particular watershed that's in Soufriere area, right through the communities down onto the nearshore coastal waters. So it encompasses a number of different groups, a number of different organizations which are all involved in some way or another in the management of the watershed. So over the last couple of years that we have engaged the different groups in the Soufriere area, we have undertaken a number of initiatives and programs in the watershed, such as dealing with farmers, promoting best practice in agriculture, slope stabilization, reforestation programs, and all of these are geared towards reducing soil loss, reducing chemical runoffs in the water courses, which obviously will end up in the nearshore coastal environments. And these are, in fact, in Saint Lucia, some of the initiatives that we have had, working to reduce chemical inputs, encourage more organic production systems, and developing the capabilities of these different groups to really practice best management practices for conservation of the biological and ecological resources in the watershed.
Rivers too must be kept clean, especially those feeding into seas and oceans. As riverbanks are very easily eroded, buffers are a must, positioned between the riverbanks and the farming zone.
There is a standard, there is a regulation, and it's called a river buffer. I think it's somewhere about 50 feet from along the edge of the river that is not to be cultivated. That is not being adhered to in a number of instances. However, recent experience shows that in areas where those buffers are respected, either through the remaining of mango trees, particularly the indigenous ones, mango long, mango palui, and so on, we have seen in events like Thomas, the December 2013 trough, these areas, the integrity of the banks were protected. But not only the integrity of the bank is protected, these trees along the banks create silt traps that reduce the amount of sediment that gets into the waterway and eventually to the coast. So it is very, very important that those of us who cultivate, farmers who cultivate, that we respect these buffers, not only to protect the waterways, but also to protect our investment. Because in as much as shoreline erosion is disastrous, when that riverbank begins to erode, the farmer's holding also becomes vulnerable.
The Coastal Management Unit stresses the importance of ensuring beaches are not overdeveloped. Even the quest to build the island's tourism profile must be done in moderation to avoid dangerously depleting vegetative cover, which is an important aspect of protecting beaches from being eroded.
The beach, as we know it, it's an important ecosystem, and you have a lot of development or a lot of coastal development, and that in itself is a concern because, of course, if you have development, you have removal of vegetation, you have marine pollution, especially because of a lot of human activity along the coast, and that in itself can impact the beach. It is important to note, though, that practices such as properly disposing of garbage could eliminate that factor of the human activity.
At the marine level, we have started a very big coral restoration program with Clear Caribbean and with the Sandals Foundation, and will involve coral outplanting so as to improve the biodiversity of the nearshore coastal waters as a ecosystem-based management adaptation to climate change. That has several components, part of which will involve training. And as you know, coral restoration, which is a very soft practice in response to climate change, will help in mitigating a number of aspects.
It's almost like you go and you plant trees or you plant plants to reduce erosion of the hillside. And what we're doing is actually providing an opportunity for coral to grow and to return or enhance the ecosystem services, or one of the ecosystem services that the coral reef provided to the island.
If the coral reef wasn't there, we'd be able to ride up onto the beach and collide with the land, cause erosion, and in extreme conditions wash extremely into the land. That wouldn't happen if you had a vibrant reef system, because the energy of the waves is caught within that reef and diffused before it impacts the land.
Change can only start from the bottom, and one person can have tremendous impact on their community.
There is quite a lot of work to do. I think we have to do some greater education of the citizenry. We have to do some greater education of the resource users, fisher folk, the tourism sector, the farmers. There is still quite a bit of work to do.
If you don't know, you could find out information on the designs of these items, of these structures. Find out information, find out what it should look like, what's the capacity, what the effluent should be, what's the standards for the effluent. And before you go and you just design or you build something, you just presume from old practices. You could go and find out some information when doing these structures.
If there were no humans, beaches will exist, they will come and they will go, depending on the forces of nature. But once we begin to use them, we've got to do that in a way that will ensure, firstly, the integrity of the beach is maintained, and that other users can enjoy the beach as well.
It is important that we understand what the farmers are doing and how what happens on land impacts the sea, and our direct human activities that are affecting that as well.
Your land is yours. You don't want it to be washed away by rains, landslides, or perhaps even in the dry season through wind action. And so do all to protect it. This is your livelihood. This is your capital investment.
There is a proper management system within the SMMA, within the near coastal area. But all of that, as I said earlier, would add up to zero because of the actual activities that happen inland. And in the wisdom of GIZ, in the CATS program, we need to make or develop the synergies between the ridge and the reef. Best practices is to have good agricultural practices. Maybe use more hydroponics, less fertilizers. So your practices within the hinterland must be right so that we can continue maintaining what we have within the marine life.
With a deadline of 2015, ensuring environmental stability was one of 8 Millennium Development Goals adopted by the United Nations. The final report saw improvement in a number of areas, but there is still work to be done to shift the world back onto a more sustainable path.